Okay, so very warm welcome to everyone, especially to our speaker tonight, Mike George. Mike George is an author of many books. He is a speaker on many topics in the business field, in a spiritual field, as well as in the academic field, right? So he has been a trainer for many years, and he has kindly offered to speak to us tonight about emotional intelligence. Actually, we asked him to, and he kindly accepted. So thank you, Mike. We have 2 sessions with this tonight and tomorrow at the same time. So we are going to go deep into the topic. Mainly this event is for the Balkan region, but there are a few people that have connected from elsewhere, but they speak English, so it should be okay. Okay, so Mike, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Dusha. And I do have a reputation for speaking quite quickly, so I expect to be slowed down with a great deal of frequency by whoever is going to translate. So first of all, let me say thank you for coming. Thank you for tuning in, or zooming in, as they say, to this very popular subject. In fact, it's been a popular topic for some 2 decades now, and it's only recently been taken over by AI, as you probably know. But emotional intelligence is now included in most MBA programs, most management leadership development programs. It's quite a big subject, hence the 2 sessions. I know some countries don't have 2 different words describing what's going on at the level of feelings and emotions. They just have one word, and it's sometimes around the territory of feelings. But in English, there are definitely 2 ideas, emotions and feelings. And we don't really learn, it's just not part of our education, about how our feelings arise, where our emotions come from, and the connection between the 2. And so that's what I'm really going to talk about tonight, is how emotions are created, where they come from, why they come from, how they come about. And then tomorrow night we'll look more on the exactly what feelings are, although we cannot avoid talking about feelings tonight, because you do feel your emotions, and I will enlarge on that particular subject a little bit more later on. So I think the main thing to say is you need to work this out for yourself. I'm going to present to you certain information which will show you, which I believe will show you the mechanisms by which we create and we get lost in our emotional state. But in a sense, each one of us has to work it out for ourselves. We have to do the work of becoming more aware of what's going on inside ourselves, inside our consciousness, as we generate this thing called feelings, and they become emotions, and then we feel the emotions. So it's not a psychology class, it's a spiritual treatment of this particular subject, if that's possible. But you really need to, an individual needs to work it out for themselves and see for themselves. That's why I often say, either before or during any talks, is you must not believe a word I say. Do not blindly believe, but see for yourself. So what I'm doing is really presenting you. Can you just switch off? I could that. Okay. So I'm recommending you see what I'm saying as indicators. I'm pointing the way which you can make your own inquiries into yourself. So without any further ado, what I'd like to do is just share with you my screen. And on that sharing, there will be a few ideas which we can work through. And then at the end of the evening, there will be time for questions or anything you want to say which challenges what I've presented, etc., etc. In fact, this particular subject will, I'm sure, raise as many questions as they will answers, which is perfectly natural and perfectly okay. So, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is being aware of our feelings and emotions, being aware of them. And so this is the first skill of EQ, is self-awareness, to discern the difference between feelings and emotions. And then, obviously in time, with practice, be the master of both. And most of us are not the master of either. We just feel, and we feel emotional, and they overtake us. They flood our consciousness most of the time. So it's the ability to recognize personal emotional states, to manage those states so they don't affect our thinking, our decision makings, and our interactions. And this is the skill, if you like, of self-control. Am I able to control myself, or is someone else or something else controlling me in the process? And mostly we've been programmed, we've been conditioned by our education, our upbringing, our parents, and so we're not so much in control, but their voices have been left behind in our memory, and so we speak and we do according to what we've been taught. And that's not such a good idea. That means we haven't learned to think things out for ourselves. And so hopefully after tonight and tomorrow night, you'll be able to see more clearly what you can use to think, to see, to know for yourself. So it's the achievement, emotional intelligence is the achievement of one's purpose and goals. And that's through the ability to manage one's feelings and emotions. And this is the issue of self-direction. Do you decide on the direction you are taking or you're going to take, or have you allowed something else to decide or someone else to decide for you, to make that decision? And most of us have an intellect which we've allowed to go to sleep in our consciousness, and we find the directions in which we go in life, the way we behave, what we do, tends to be dictated by other people and situations. And so we're not that in control of our direction, less than what we think. It's the ability to manage, to balance one's motives and drives with conscientious and ethical behavior. So, and this is the issue of motivation or self-motivation. So what gets you out of bed in the morning? What motivates you through the day? Is it just to make more money? Or is there something deeper that's moving you, that's motivating you? And so this is directly tied to the deepest meaning of emotion, motion, to move, what moves you on the inside. And we will look at motivation a little bit later. It's being sensitive to the feelings and the emotions of others. Yeah, and able to respond appropriately to them. And if this, of course, is the issue or the skill or the ability to empathize, not sympathize, not apathize, in other words, don't care, but to empathy, to understand the feelings and the emotions that our others are going through without feeling, without emoting the same as they are. And finally, it's a variety of non-cognitive skills, capabilities, competencies that influence absolutely everything. And this has spun off as what's called social skills. And this is a separate subject now. And there's a variety of books and training courses, etc., on non-cognitive skills, capabilities, and competencies, which used to be associated with EQ, but now have their own place in the curriculum, as they say. So, 4 foundational insights. Always I'm referring to you as consciousness or the soul, whatever label you want to give it. But we give consciousness or the soul different labels, psyche or spirit, and that is the being. Each of us is a human being. So really I'm referring to the being of consciousness where feelings are created initially. And to do that, we need to be more aware. The awareness is the ground of our being. Yeah, it's prior to everything in our being, and we are always aware. So it's about becoming aware of what we are feeling, when we are feeling, how we are feeling, and the same, what we are emoting, when we are emoting, and how we are emoting. Emotions. Come back to that in a few seconds. And so attachment is the key to understanding why and how we become emotional. And attachment takes place within our consciousness when we get attached to something that's on our minds and we lose ourself to that something or some person or some place or that memory or that belief which we put on the screen of our minds, which is a layer above awareness, if you like, and then we become trapped in what's on our minds. And that's probably the most frequent human mistake in our consciousness now. But they don't teach us this in school, obviously. And so love itself, which is the one that causes the most confusion, the idea of love or loving, loveful or lovefulness, it's not an emotion. And this is where the confusion begins. We believe that love can be emotional, but it's a state of being, but not an emotion. As soon as you become emotional, it destroys any love that exists within our consciousness. But once again, I'll come back to that a little bit later on because that is quite controversial. That's really understanding at the deepest level. So for example, let's see how emotion is created. We all have a mind, and it's like a screen in our consciousness, like a television screen. You can put any thought, any idea, any story, any concept across the screen of your mind. But let's say you have a new car sitting out on the road, and you like your new car. So you bring your new car into your consciousness, which is represented here by this shiny star-like shape. You bring the car into your consciousness and you put the car up on the screen of your mind. But the big mistake that we all make is that we go into our minds. Not just go into our minds, but we go into the car, the object on our mind, appearing on the screen of our mind. And that's the moment when we lose ourself in what's on our mind. And so what is born is the ego. Ego is when we identify with what is on our minds. And we know we identify because we lose ourself. We can think about nothing else, about the person or the object or the car or whatever is on our mind. We're thinking about it all the time. And so it's, in a sense, we've lost ourselves in what's on our mind. So I go into my mind. Then I go into the image of the car on my mind. then I lose my sense of self in that image. And this is what we're not aware of. This takes place very quickly, and might only last for a few seconds or a few minutes or a few hours, but we lose ourself in the image. And this is called attachment. This is where I get attached to whatever's on my mind. Then someone walks down the street and they scratch the car with a coin. Yeah, they damage the car, and it's as if they damage me. I become very angry, so now, therefore I am suffering, and the anger, the emotion of anger, I become very angry, and that's because they've damaged the car. But I believe, and I'm not aware, that they have damaged me, so I react with pain, suffering really. Which is emotional suffering. Anger is emotional suffering. And so if you want to be angry, you can. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad or what have you, but this is why the anger appears in my consciousness and why I feel the anger in my being. And then it comes down, and maybe it comes out in my behavior, or maybe I suppress it and I keep smiling, but inside I'm suppressing the anger. I'm suffering inside. So if you don't want to suffer, be detached. And this is why detachment is at the heart of any spiritual path, worth its salt, really. But people tend to think of detachment as cold, as hard. I don't care, I separate. But it doesn't mean this at all. It just means changing my relationship with the object or with the car. I have the car, I have people in my life, but I'm not attached to them. Yeah, and so I have a relationship of non-attachment with whatever comes into my life and leaves my life. Now, whatever does come, it does come and it does go. But of course, we try and hold on to it. We try and keep it. And so we get attached to it or them or that or this place or the way that that desk is organized. We become attached to it. So detachment means allowing myself to have a relationship of non-attachment. So I still have the desk and it's arranged a certain way. I still have the person and the people. So I let them come and I let them go. I'm free. I allow that to happen. I'm not attached. I'm not trying to grasp or hold on to anything. So far, so good. So what do we get attached to? Things and places and people and ideas and beliefs and teams and memories. So many things we get attached to, not to mention our cars. So imagine that this circle here is your consciousness, and at the core of your consciousness is you, the spiritual being, the soul, the Atma, the radiant point of light at the center of consciousness, which is you. And in that center, you have become attached to, well, we just saw my car. This is what I say. Or it could be my husband or my wife. I get very attached to the person. Or it could be my belief or belief system. I believe I'm right and I believe you're wrong. If at any time you notice you are in the middle of an argument, you have got yourself into an argument, then that's because you're attached to a belief and you're probably feeling threatened by another person's belief. And therefore you're trying to change them to agree with your belief, which you believe is right and that they are wrong. This is at the core of most conflicts, most wars, in fact, is I believe we are right and that you are wrong. And so these are the forms of attachment that take place very easily, very quickly. And you can feel when you're in the middle of the argument, if you become aware just for a moment, and it's not easy, you'll be aware of the presence of fear, the presence of anger within your consciousness. And that's what you are feeling. You'll say you are feeling angry, you're feeling fearful, but in fact, you are miscreating the emotions of fear and of anger. So you feel these emotions. And I think this is why most countries have one word, just feelings. But actually, whenever you become emotional, you're distorting the energy of your consciousness from its natural state, which is love, which is peace, which is contentment. You're distorting that energy, and that's what you are. You are energy. You're distorting it into some emotional, well, let's say anger or fear or sadness. So you're just distorting the energy and you are feeling those emotions. Yeah. So attachment occurs once again when you lose yourself in what is on your mind. So you can have these things on your mind, your car, your husband, your beliefs, but you don't have to get attached to them. You don't have to hold on to them. You don't have to misuse them to define yourself, because that's what you're doing. You're identifying with them. Might just be for 5 minutes, might be for 5 hours, it might be for 5 years, or a whole lifetime. You use that to find your sense of self-identity. So ego equals attachment. This sense of self-identity, which is the ego, follows you becoming attached to anything in your life, anyone in your life. And if you're attached to anything, you're holding on to anything, there'll be some kind of resistance, and you will know there is a resistance. You don't want to let go. Whatever you get attached to, there'll be fear of damage, fear of loss, fear of someone else taking away what it is you're holding on to. And so you will know this by the resistance you are putting up against a person, a situation, or whatever. You will be in resistance. Now, where there is resistance, there is fear. Yeah, when there is resistance, you'll always be aware of the emotion of fear. Fear means forget everything and run. Or false experience appearing real. Yeah. And so fear is the primary emotion we don't want to feel, but it equals the ego if you come full circle. Where there is fear, there is some kind of ego. In other words, misidentification. In other words, I'm identifying with something that I'm not. I'm not just identifying, but I'm attached to it. I'm holding on to it. I'm using it to give me a sense of security, to give me my sense of self. Because no one teaches us your true identity, which is as the spiritual being, the entity that is called the soul at the core of my consciousness. So what is stress? Stress is basically fear. You could sum all stress up as in one word, as a form of fear. And we just take it for granted and we live with it and we think we have to live with it and we try and eventually do something with it if it becomes too great, or if we lose our physical health. It's largely because the energy in our physical body has become subject to too much fear, and it's called stress in most languages. And really, we now see it's just a mistake. We are mistaking ourselves for something that we're not. And so if you correct the mistake, that's all it is, just correct the mistake, wake up, be aware of who you really are, then it goes away, it disappears. And of course, there's many people teaching how to do that nowadays, but that's the very core of what we are doing. So there is different behaviors which follow from any form of resistance, from any form of misidentification, from criticizing, possessing, to complaining, to blaming, to limiting, projecting, escaping, avoiding. All these are forms of resistance. And whenever I notice myself behaving in such a way, I know that it's because that I'm holding on to something. I'm attached to something in my consciousness. Yeah. And so basically there's not there's not much left after you've been through all those. But gradually, the spiritual path takes you beyond having to behave like this in any context. Gradually, for everyone, it takes you beyond and restores your consciousness to what it really is, to be free of any attachment and therefore not to have to behave in any of these ways. Not easy for some people, for some behaviors, not easy to be free of them, but it takes time, and that's the nature of the spiritual journey. So if I was to give you an example of, well, let's say the behavior is I'm criticizing, I'm being very critical of what's going on. I might sit in a meeting and say, I think your idea is not very good. It'll never work. I don't know if you ever thought that in a meeting or said that in a meeting. And because you're resisting their idea, you criticize because there is fear. Fear is behind it. I think my idea is better. I'm slightly scared that your idea will be accepted. And so because of that, I might then go a little bit more deeply into my consciousness and notice that I'm attached to and identified with the image of my idea, which is really my idea. If you want to say it like that, I'm attached to my idea. But really, it's always an image or an idea in our consciousness that we get attached to, because the mind deals in images. Or number two, possessing, for example. I didn't like that you were enjoying you were laughing with that person at the party the other night. You were having fun with them, weren't you? And then the fear, because I have to ask the person what was going on. The fear is, if I look behind it, I'm scared you might like me less, or you might even leave me. And so the fear is very real behind my resistance to what looked like, or what I interpreted as, someone talking, having fun with you, and I'm trying to possess you. And so what's the identification? What's the attachment? It's to the other person. But that's love, isn't it? Isn't love when you have fun with the other all the time? Well, it can be, but not to the observer, not to the other half, as they say. But we are brought up. We have two great teachers which teach us that love is attachment. And those two teachers, otherwise known as Hollywood and Bollywood, through the movies they produce, they encourage us to believe that attachment is love. But it's not. It's an illusion, basically. And if I'm attached to the other person, then it's not going to be love, it's going to be fear. There's going to be tension, there's going to be worry, there's going to be upsetness towards that person. No matter what that person does, eventually that will happen within me. Those emotions will happen within me. So I'm going to leave you very shortly, once this presentation is over, and with a little bit of homework, with the mission to do the same process on complaining, blaming, and self-limiting. So if you have a pen handy, just write that down. What's an example of that in your life? What's the fear when you are complaining? And then what are you attached to? What's making you fearful and what's making you complain? And the same with blaming. What's making you blame others? And what's the fear that you have that's erupting in your consciousness and that you're attached to inside? What's self-limiting? Self-limiting means those moments when I say I can't, or I'm not able, I don't want to. And so what is the fear behind that? And what is it you're attached to, basically? So I leave you to do that for yourself. And it's a great awareness exercise. It helps you become more aware of what's going on in your consciousness. That's all it is. It's just an awareness exercise. And so a definition of emotion might go something like this. Emotion is a disturbance in the energy of my or your consciousness when the object of attachment is damaged, threatened, moved, or lost. Emotion is a disturbance in the energy of my consciousness when the object of attachment is damaged, threatened, moved, or lost. Take, for example, the car. I created the emotion of anger when someone damaged my car. And so the disturbance is called anger. Where does it begin? It begins in the energy of my consciousness because I'm attached to the car, my car. I don't get angry when someone else's car is damaged, but when my car is damaged, I get very upset. Are you a perfectionist? And the perfectionist walks in the room and they have to have everything all lined up exactly perfectly. And if someone moves something, the perfectionist becomes very irritated. There's something missing. There's something not right about the way things have been arranged. That's it. That should be just over there. It should be just so. And so once the perfection is restored, they're okay. But previous, they got slightly upset and they got slightly irritated. And irritation is an emotion. They created suffering for themselves because maybe a cup or maybe an object on the table was moved slightly out of sync with what they expect to take place with objects on their table. Have you ever lost your car keys? You get very tense, you get very anxious, and the longer you've lost your car keys, the more anxiety builds up inside. And then suddenly you find your car keys and the anxiety disappears. It just disappears and you are able to relax. So that anxiety, that tension was the emotion created in your consciousness, and you were feeling it. And notice that when you felt it, you couldn't think straight. Yeah, you couldn't speak coolly and calmly and peacefully with whoever was else in the room. You were just, where are my keys? Where are my keys? Very tense, very upset, very anxious. And so that's when a feeling calm, feeling peaceful, feeling very still, very relaxed, then becomes an emotion. The emotion of anxiety, the emotion of tension, the feeling becomes emotion, and you feel that emotion. So the things that we get very easily attached to, objects and other people, especially our family, and this is why families are often a place of great conflict, because of the familiarity, the expectation of family, the people we see every day and live with every day. Yeah. And so we become expectant, we become overly familiar. And suddenly the natural feelings of relaxation, of peace, of lovefulness, they become tense, anxious. Why are you doing this? Why are you not doing that? Why you don't give me your time, and etc., etc. And we become easily upset and therefore emotional in those relationships. But we also get very attached to our beliefs. Most religions, most people of a religious nature are very attached to their beliefs. And so they eventually go into some state of conflict with other religions or other people of differing beliefs. And then there's attachment to our memories, to where we went on holiday last year. Wasn't a lovely holiday? Wasn't it beautiful? And of course, it was last year, it was in the past. But of course, every time we talk about it, we must talk about it differently. But we did this in our holiday, didn't we? Oh, I start arguing with another person who believe we did that in our holiday. And so we get attached to the past as well. And so there's many things we get very attached to. And it's only through self-awareness that we begin to notice what it is we're attached to. So 3 families of emotion, essentially. This is what they didn't teach us at school. I wish they had, is fear. And there's different faces of fear: worry, panic, tension, anxiety. These are all forms of fear. Then there's different forms of anger. Very early form is irritation, frustration, rage, eventually when you want to kill someone for, oh, they shouldn't have done that. And so anger has different faces as well. And then sadness is the other main one. And sadness or sorrow, melancholy, the sense of hopelessness, or maybe even depression after a while, they're all the family of sadness. And then guilt and shame. These are a combination of all 3 emotions. Yeah, the shame belief is I have done something bad. So you're attached to that belief in your consciousness. And it throws up this thought very frequently, I'm done something bad. Or the guilt belief is I am a bad person. Yeah, and again, that throws up that thought in your consciousness. Maybe it's become a habit and you feel guilty, you feel shame. So both of these emotions have all 3, fear, anger, and sadness, included in each one. I'll let you work out what that is. And then finally, almost finally, we get locked into a bit of a cycle. And sadness always follows some sense of loss. Whether you've lost a person or an opportunity or a reputation or a thing, an object, a place, you feel sad. But the sadness won't stay. It will turn in your consciousness into anger as you look for someone or something to blame for your loss. But the anger won't stay. It will turn into some kind of fear. The fear that it might happen again. And of course, if you fear that loss will happen again, it's more or less guaranteed that it will. And so you will be sad again, and you'll be angry again, you'll be fearful again. So we get locked into this cycle without really being aware that we are. Yeah. And the only way free, if you want to be free, and there's me at the very center of that cycle, my consciousness, and consciousness is the soul and the heart. Heart and soul are at the center. Yes, we have a physical heart, but we have the very heart of our consciousness. And that's where everything actually happens first in our life. So the only way free is to realize that we were carrying a belief that I possess. Yeah, and of course we are encouraged to get as many possessions in our life, to define ourselves by the amount of possessions. We define success by the amount of possessions. This is why they say, you have possessions. No, you don't, but your possessions have you. Yes, they do. And so because you believe that it's useful, it's good to have as many possessions as possible. And so the realization that needs to happen is the truth that nothing and no one belongs to me. Nothing is mine. I cannot possess anything. Everything comes and goes. Everyone comes and goes. Yeah. And so in those moments, as at moments of letting go, letting things go, letting people go, letting situations go, letting whatever it is, I just let go, then I'm free. I free myself from this cycle. Otherwise, I'm kind of lost in the cycle. I get stuck in the cycle, and it's quite subtle. So thanks, there's that sadness, is melancholy, sorrow, depression, anger, is irritation, it's frustration. It's those different kinds of emotions that fall under, that become or come from these particular three main families. So at the very heart of my being, the heart of my being, I am at peace and I am loveful and I have a happy resource. These are resources on the inside. And whenever you feel calm, you're drawing on that resource of peace. Whenever you reach out and care for another person without wanting anything in return, then you're drawing on your resource of being loving towards a situation or a person. And the deepest form of happiness, this is me, this may not, you may not agree with this, is a form of contentment, is when I'm very content. So I draw on my resource of being happy and I sit quietly, I'm very contented. And I'm emanating contentment, I'm emanating fear, I'm emanating calm. And so these are emanating from my consciousness. Tesla, the famous guy, Tesla once said, once his favorite quote, which I'm sure you've read, is that if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. In other words, we are constantly emanating vibrations. If those vibrations are peaceful and they're loving, truly, then they are the highest vibrations. But most of the time, people tend to, or not most of the time, but maybe a little bit of the time, tend to emanate the vibration of anger, of fear, of sadness. And so that's what we've learned in growing up. And we've been told that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry, it's good to be fearful. And so that's what people have learned to believe. And because they've learned that, they've suppressed their nature, their natural vibration of peace, of love, of happiness. So why do we become attached? Because of the illusion of mine. You know, my idea, my car, my achievement. We like to talk about my memories or my beliefs are. And so we use the word mine because we've been taught to believe we need to acquire and possess and own these things. We've been taught to believe that we're dependent on those things, dependent on memory, dependent on achievement, dependent on people that we might call our better half. We become dependent on them, and so they become mine. Yeah. And you've been taught to believe that success is only measured according to how much you manage to accumulate in the process of calling these things mine. How much can you have? How successful are you? And then finally, you've been taught to believe that your story is my story. People love to talk about what's happening in their life and my story. And they love to tell you their story. Oh, have you not heard? This is my story. And that happened to me last week. That was my story. And I'm so proud. And I'm holding on to it. In fact, I'm telling you a week later because I'm very attached to my story. And so why do we keep telling stories? Because we get attached to them. They become fixated in our minds. So only you make yourself emotional, which means only you make yourself suffer. Emotion is suffering, basically. And only you are the creator, and only you are making yourself suffer. Yeah, it's a bit extreme, and I'm sure you'll challenge that. But in management and leadership, there is such a thing as detached involvement. There's a book called Detached Involvement, and you can read about it. And it's this idea of to be a good leader, to be a good manager, then I need to be involved with the other people that I'm managing or I'm leading. I need to be involved with them, to do things with them, or to stand back from them, but to be detached at the same time. So it seems like an oxymoron, an opposite in terms, but it's not really. It's necessary to be involved but be detached. To be detached, but at the same time engaged, involved in what's going on. Yeah, and that is not an easy skill, but it's learnable in this life. So a little bit of homework, and tomorrow we'll pick it up on the idea of feeling. But how would you define emotion, and how would you define feeling? So simple definitions of emotion and feeling. Take a blank piece of paper, take a pen, and a quiet corner somewhere at home, and just have a scribble and see what comes. And remember that the secret is to become truly aware of your own inexperience. Okay, experience if you want, but inexperience is what we're looking for. When was the last time you were emotional? And how does that compare with feeling? How does that help me define emotion and define feeling? Because they're two quite separate words. So feeling and emotion. So I leave you with that little bit of homework, or that little bit of awareness work inside, and to see what comes. And so part 2 of this, because there was just the feeling that this is enough information at this point in time. Part 2 tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the same time on the same channel. And I've already talked far too much, and so let me stop there and let you have your say on anything that I've heard. And Dusha will translate for you.
Okay, so are there any questions or comments? There is
Da li
nothing
mogu
that...
nešto pitati?
Apsolutno, yes.
Prvo da se zahvalim predavaču, stvarno mi se sviđa.
First of all, I would like to thank the speaker. I really like what he said.
Ja, što poznajem od literature pedagoške, je bilo kakva inteligencija opredeljena kao sposobnost.
Ono što, what I know from literature that I've read so far is that, can you, reci opet Stanka, da je
Molim?
inteligencija je sposobnost, jesi to rekla?
Da, tako da. Da
What I know from
inteligencija je prevedena kako sposobnost i to označuje.
I to?
Označuje neku sposobnost čovjeka.
Okay, that intelligence is really a virtue in a human. It's a strength.
Da,
Okay.
da u tom smislu da mi posjedujemo tu sposobnost i možemo je razviti ako smo temu potiknuti.
Okay, so really, I think a better way to say it's that intelligence is ability, and that we all of us have, but we also can develop.
Da. I tako, na primjer, ova emocionalna inteligencija se nanosi da smo sposobni prepoznati čustva drugih ljudi, da smo sposobni sa njima komunicirati na toj ravni.
And we now learn through this emotional intelligence to recognize how people feel, to recognize the feelings of other people. And šta je bilo ovo zadnje?
I da smo sposobni na taj način komunicirati preko tih emocija.
Aha, and to really communicate with others through those emotions.
Da. A ovde, kako što je predavač počeo, je počeo kako da moramo biti svesni, znači svesni svojih emocija, a to već znači, već predvideva da imamo neko znanje.
According to what you said, we need to already have some pre-knowledge in order to control those emotions.
Da, to mislim sad da napravi neku paralelu među njegovog pogleda, njegove definicije, kako što je počeo, ili ova opšta pedagoška literatura kako pojmuje inteligenciju.
Okay, so if you can make a parallel between what you are saying and the current popular theory of pedagogy, that they are...
Ne, to nije current.
O pedagogy.
Klasični.
Oh, classic pedagogy or pedagogy, whatever. I would like to ask something to clarify, so just 1 second. Stanka, ja nisam razumela tačno šta hoćeš. Paralela između čega? Šta je on to rekao da se ne podudara sa pedagogijom?
Pa, tako. Znači, on počne na predavanje tebe kad nije treba da smo svesni na sebe, na takvi. Znači, ta svest predvidува дека веќе имаме некое знаење за нас. А во другата педагошка литература, која во главном се нанесува на општа интелигенција и така, е предвидено дека тоа е само способност со која што може да развиваме знаење. Тоа е таа паралела, ако може некако да ја направи.
Okay, apparently in the pedagogy, they say that the intelligence is its ability through which we can develop knowledge, whilst in what you were saying, it says that we already need to have awareness. That means that we already need to have something before we...
Да имамо веќе неко знање.
Can I interrupt you? I'm just aware that many other people will have questions, or as opposed to just one idea. But I didn't say at the beginning, and I should have said at the beginning, that emotional intelligence is an oxymoron. They are opposite terms. When you become emotional, you lose your ability to be intelligent. And intelligent is to use what you know in the right way, the right place, at the right time. To use what you know the right way, the right place, at the right time. And we do not know what happens in our consciousness when we create emotion. We don't know, we don't understand that. So really, this is a spiritual, not a pedagogical concept. This is a spiritual understanding of what happens in our consciousness when emotion is created, and it requires a much deeper level of awareness than most of us have. It's entirely individual, internal, entirely. That's why I say to you, We need to work it out for ourselves. We need to go inside, put the books to one side, and realize that our consciousness is the only book worth reading and seeing and understanding for ourselves. So I just wondered if anyone else had any questions or anything that they would like.
Well,
with.
in the comments, there's only one question what FEAR means. If you can repeat what it stands for, the acronym. There were
Fear
two.
is, well, the acronym is slightly light-hearted, is forget everything and run. Forget everything and run. Or false experience appearing real. So you experience your attachment to an object or a person, and it appears that they are real in your consciousness, in your mind. And it's not. They're not real. They're just an image in your mind. But you get attached to them. But they are in your mind as an image. Yeah. And so you can't get attached, but you can try, and people do try. And that's why they suffer so much.
Yes. Okay, so the other messages are that it was very insightful and they're thanking. Okay, are there any more questions or comments? Stanka, I hope your question was answered or clarified.
Mogla pitati? Jel mogu pitati?
Da, yes.
Dobro. Htjela sam zahvaliti jer je tema uvijek iscrpna, jaka i velika o emotivnoj inteligenciji.
Ako se slabo čuje.
Ne znam da li me čujete. Da. Htjela sam postaviti pitanje.
Is asking a question?
Something about physical exercise.
No, that's somebody else. But
Okay.
Okay, Lidija, izvoli.
Ili mogu pitati? Ja.
Da, apsolutno, izvoli.
Ovako. Zahvaljujem se na temi, uvijek je i poznata, ali toliko puno u njoj se ima novog naučiti.
I'm very grateful for your talk, and it's a very good topic, and there is so much more to learn.
Pogotovo mi se ovo na kraju dopalo kad ste rekli spoznaja. U duši koju spoznamo je jača od mnogih knjiga.
Naročito mi se, I especially like what you said at the end, that when you get to know yourself is more powerful than any other book.
I imam pitanje.
And I have a question.
Kada upravo iz spoznaje pokušavam na drugi način studentima pojasniti emotivnu inteligenciju.
When I try to explain to my students about emotional intelligence.
Iz spoznaje, a ne iz knjiga.
From the awareness and not from the books.
A spoznaju sam naučila u Brahma Kumarisu.
And this awareness and consciousness I've learned from Brahma Kumaris.
Onda kada, na primjer, temu religije i Boga započnemo, tu bude blokada.
And when we start the theme of religion and spirituality, then there is a blockage.
Tu postoji veliki strah da promijenimo uvjerenje neko.
There is a lot of fear to change beliefs.
Evo, moje pitanje glasi, ima li neki način da im približim to? Da ih ne udaljavam time od Boga, nego ih približavam.
Is there any way you can share that I can use to bring them closer to God and not to push them away?
Yes, of course. Yeah, it's a good question. Most religions have a scripture, and in the scripture there are certain ideas, and they tell people who follow that religion, you must believe this. And if you don't believe in this, there will be some punishment, or you must follow what you read. Whereas spirituality says, don't believe anything, see for yourself. Yeah, and that means you or the individual has to do their own work within themselves to see clearly. And that's why I've been kind of saying to you that you really need to see this for yourself. In other words, on your own experience, you begin to see the process that you go through by which you create emotion. Now, if you want to help them to know God, you could I often use the metaphor of the sunlight, and the sunlight is in everything, is absolutely in everything that you can think of in the material world. Now, there is the equivalent of sunlight in the spiritual world. Yeah, the universe of spirit, or the soul, or consciousness, or what you are, that there is also a source of energy. Just like the sun is a source of energy in the physical world, there's a source of energy in the spiritual universe of consciousness. And that source is often called God, or Supreme Soul, or the source, if you like, the supreme source. It doesn't really matter what label you give it, but you can have a personal connection to that source without needing to go through anybody or anything. And if you cultivate a personal connection to that source, forget the material for a while, cultivate that personal connection, you will feel the energy that comes from the spiritual sun, the sunlight that comes from spirit. I mean, I'm talking metaphorically, but you will feel that energy entering you and empowering you. And that empowers you to be more aware as well as anything else.
Okay, Lydia?
Potrudit ću se, mislim da sam shvatila. Pitat ću Marinu i tebe ako dodatno treba.
Okay.
Hvala.
Okay, for now, thank you. Okay, so the next question is, how does physical exercise impact on emotions?
Well, I mean, it's useful to you've got to look after the body, you've got to take care of the body. And so you do physical exercise so that you care for your physical form. And so the better condition your physical form is in, the better condition your consciousness is going to be in. One affects the other. Consciousness affects form, and form affects consciousness. And so eat the right things, do the right exercises, keep the right timetable in your life, and you will become sharper in your mind, which is a non-physical thing. Your body will be much better, but you will be less distracted by anything that might happen in your body. In other words, healing is much easier, and therefore whatever you had wrong with your body is healed, and therefore you are freer to be more concentrated, to be more of yourself. And so don't stop doing physical exercise, care for your body, look after it, but it's not the be all and end all. It's just an instrument, if you like. And you are the occupier, you are the animator of the instrument. That's why when somebody dies, when they make the transition out of this body, they leave the body, the soul leaves the body, which is fairly obvious. And so the body is lifeless. The body is lying there and it has no life, has nobody occupying and nobody animating it any longer. And so it's finished. And so that might happen through natural causes, or it might happen through illness, because they haven't looked after the costume of the body in this lifetime. And so it's this, there's the two, they're interrelated, they work together, and so you cannot ignore your physical body. You have to look after it. It's like your car.
Okay. there any more questions? Comments?
It's good. Any questions, just put them in the chat box. You've got the chat box at the bottom there, and Dusha will translate for you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to go away with the feeling that everybody in the Balkans is very shy. It's very quiet.
Well, shy, or maybe just understood everything you said.
Or maybe it's so clear. Yeah, maybe it's everything is so clear.
You know, we have rational intelligence also.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Maybe it's just too basic for everybody. I don't know.
Oh, I don't think so. No, it was just right, I think. Okay.
Okay.
Sophia come after Enga? There is a question. Sophia come after Enga? Sophia comes after Enga.
Oh, that's a question, is it?
Well, this is, or maybe checking whether it's true. I don't know.
No, essentially fear is the ground, is the core. You know, if you think about love as your natural state, you know, that becomes fear. You know, if you put something in the way, that love is emanating. Love is emanating from every human being, from their consciousness. But then they become attached to something, and it turns that energy of love, that emanation of love, into fear. It's the same energy, but it's just distorted by attachment on the way out, if that's the right way to say it. And so fear is the core emotion. You know, it's the core emotional creation.
Okay. There is a comment. It says there was a lot of information. We have to listen once more, and then maybe we can define some questions.
Okay, very good.
So that's why we are recording. People can watch, and then they can do questions tomorrow and do the homework also.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so thank you very much. See you again tomorrow night.
Thank you very much.
You'd like to know about feelings and the difference, the exact precise difference between feelings and emotions. Tonight, we were just looking at how emotions are created, how they're generated on the inside. And so the relationship with feelings and what feelings are exactly tomorrow night.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.